It's the 91st all-time meeting between the Dallas Cowboys and former divisional foe, the Arizona Cardinals. Two teams going in different directions. The Cowboys at 2-0 with, of course, all the hopes still on the board for the Dallas Cowboys. On the other side, the Arizona Cardinals looking for their first win of 2023, but they get their NFC foe at home at State Farm Stadium. Welcome in to Cowboys Pregame Live, presented by WinStar World Casino and Resort. We have Barry Church, Isaiah Stanback, Nate Newton with Nick Eatman out at State Farm Stadium. We'll hear from him down on the sideline in a couple of moments. I'm Kyle Yeomans, Nick Harris to join us a little bit later on as well. But it always seems like something odd happens when the Cowboys and the Cardinals get together. Throw the records out of the books, throw the starters out of the books, and we'll get to plenty of Cowboy starters. There have been some injury woes this week, but Arizona has won 6 of the last 7 against the Dallas Cowboys, and that's something in the back of the mind, I think, for Mike McCarthy's bunch. What's so odd about this former rivalry?
Well, I think it has to do a lot with matchups. In those past matchups, I feel like Arizona might have gotten the upper hand when you talk about skill positions versus that Cowboy skill positions. But now, when you talk about this matchup now, I think the Cowboys, they just got to remain themselves. And that is a dominant defense that takes the football away and an offense that takes care of the football and controls time of possession. Where you get out of yourself is when you start doing things that you're not necessarily programmed to do. Offensively, throwing the football 40 to 50 times. Defensively, being undisciplined out there, giving big plays up. Because that's the only way, in my opinion at least, Arizona can stay in this game is with big plays. So if the Cowboys just remain themselves, the team that they've been through the first 3 games, they should have no problem defeating the Arizona Cardinals.
I agree with you. But, when you look at the 1-6 record over the last 7 games, that's history. That's what records show history. It has nothing to do with the team that's stepping on the field today. Those guys have to go out there, put their best foot forward, make sure that you show up regardless of who's on the field for the opposing team, and make sure that you execute your assignments.
You know what? I know we're supposed to be focused, and I know everything's supposed to be right for these guys, and I know it's still young in the season. But you know what? Social media, shed it off. You got to put a LeBron James during the playoffs.
Yes.
I'm turning off all phones. You don't want to hear the good or the bad. You just want to prepare, like Barry said, and be the best you can be.
Yeah, and this Cardinals team is a little bit desperate at the moment, coming in at 0-2. They do not have their starting quarterback, Kyler Murray, available. New head coach in Arizona as well. They've got a stout run game. They've got a defense that likes the blitz, too. They like to get after and pressure opposing quarterbacks, all things that have certainly kept the Cowboys at bay in years past, in games past even. Well, this year they're 2-0. They've looked great through the first 2 weeks of the regular season, and the Cowboys will look to continue that momentum against that desperate Cardinals team today. Now, here's the one thing about this week, and Nate just said it. You have the tweets on. If you had your tweet notifications on this week, it wasn't always positive for the Cowboys because Thursday afternoon, Trevon Diggs, the news broke, he's out for the season, torn ACL in practice, one of the best corners in the entire National Football League. 15 interceptions, 38 pass breakups, and that's just from the start of the 2021 season. How big of a loss is this for this Cowboys defense?
It's a huge loss because when you lose a player the caliber of Trevon Diggs, Pro Bowl, All-Pro player, you just named his stats, 15 interceptions, 38 pass breakups. Those type of guys aren't just walking around on the street. They don't grow on trees. So naturally, your defense is going to take a step back when you lose a player the caliber of him. But in Dan Quinn, we trust, all right? And I'm sure he'll have a game plan together to where this defense can be just as dominant as it was with Trevon Diggs.
Well, I know you lose your fear factor, and I'm not talking about a game show. Yep. You got Trevon Diggs on one side, you got Stephon Gilmore on the other. Whenever opposing quarterbacks step to the line of scrimmage, is not the combination you want to see. Obviously, everything that you just mentioned, Barry, is the reason why you're going to miss Trevon and his production. You can't replace it, but you can ask one of your other guys to step up and start making some plays so that you can start building your new game plan around those guys.
Like Parsons would do on the front end, he gives the quarterback so many seconds to get rid of the ball. That's what a defensive back does. One that can play one-on-one defense, he can press up and give that defensive lineman an extra step to get there. So he's going to be a big loss.
It's really the combination of the two, the Stephon Gilmore and Trevon Diggs, that had Cowboys fans excited. Trevon Diggs is a shutdown corner,
yes,
and he has been these last 2 years, despite what some of the numbers might say and some of the film might say. He had that on lockdown, and he was playing his best football through the first 2 weeks of the regular season. To speak more on that, here's head coach Mike McCarthy earlier in the week on just how big of a loss this is for this Cowboys team.
Well, I mean, this is the best I've ever seen him. I mean, he had a great off season. His training camp was, the confidence that he was playing with. I mean, his ball skills are just off the charts. I've never seen anybody like him. And and actually, the injury occurred with him competing for a ball down in the red zone in a one-on-one. So he's always all over the ball. But yeah, on a personal note, just to, you could see him, starting to grow. This is, things were really lined up for him to be one of our leaders. Obviously with the new contract and everything, but you could see him growing in every way, possible. So yes, this is a challenge that he'll attack because that's just the way he's wired, and but most importantly, I just want to make sure he feels the support because we obviously are going to miss him as a player, but he's a big part of our team and our culture and everything we got going here.
So Trevon Diggs out for the season. Here was his response on Twitter saying, "Thank you for all the prayers. Appreciate everyone for checking up. It's a part of God's plan, and he will be back and better than ever." Of course, he's had plenty of reaction around the NFL as well. I mean, not only his teammates, but also some of the competitors throughout the National Football League voicing not only their disappointment in not having Trevon Diggs on the field, but also what's going to happen to this Cowboys defense moving forward as well. We certainly wish the best for Trevon. Here's what they could be replacing Trevon with. Deron Bland, who had been playing in the slot without Jordan Lewis healthy, now bounces to the outside. Already 6 interceptions in his first 19 games as a professional. Then you have Jordan Lewis, who was the starter in the slot, now just returns back to his home base. A chance for Dallas to find a rhythm on the cornerback position, even without Trevon Diggs in the fold. And thank goodness you made the addition, Stephon Gilmore, at the start of the season. You feel much better about that secondary now, even with an all-pro not playing the rest of the season. Barry, as a secondary player, how big is this to lose a corner like that and lose you were a safety.
Yes, sir.
How does this affect everybody on the back end, and how do you replace it?
Well, when you lose a guy like Diggs, I mean, it's huge, especially from the safety standpoint, because when you have 2 bookend corners like that can lock down, it makes your job so much easier. You don't have to worry about helping over the top. You understand when you play man-to-man coverage, which Dan Quinn loves to do, you can free up. We used to call it Ed Reed. Just read the quarterback's eyes, and that's why you see all these defensive backs getting great breaks on the ball, because they have a great defensive line and they have 2 lockdown guys on the outside. So as a safety, you can break on everything you see from the quarterback. But with him being gone, thank goodness this roster is constructed the way it is, because outside of the defensive line, that cornerback room to me is the deepest position on this secondary. You slide Bland to the outside, who's a longer corner. Dan Quinn loves his long corners. A ball guy in his own right with 6 interceptions. And you slide the veteran Jordan Lewis into that slot corner, which before the injury, he was considered one of the top slot corners in the National Football League. A ball guy, somewhat of himself, very intelligent football guy, understands how the offense is going to attack the defense. So to me, those 2 guys are going to have to step up to replace Trevon Diggs. They'll take a step back, but Dan Quinn will have this team ready to go this afternoon.
Yeah, everything that Barry just said is absolutely correct. I mean, you have, Jay Lou that's going to be able to step into the fold. Luckily, you just got him back off of the injury list. Obviously, Deron Bland, he's been very successful. You talk about Jay Lou having 8 interceptions in his career over 80-some-odd games. Well, Deron Bland has 6 interceptions in just 19 games, which is absolutely crazy. So the production is going to be there on the field. You still have ball hawks, but I do think that you lose some of your length. Obviously, Trevon, there's a whole lot of attributes that he possesses, but you're going to lose that size. I mean, he's usually bigger, if not the same size as most of the receivers that he's going to be going against. Now you're going with the smaller, quicker guys that are still ball hawks and be able to sit in the hip pockets.
Yeah, this overall, you look at really the secondary for Dallas, and it's deeper than it ever has been. Ever has been, especially with Dan Quinn in the fold and the way that he can maneuver back and forth between the two. It helps out the fact that you have so many players, so many pieces on the back end. Without Trevon Diggs, it's always going to be a what if for this Dallas defense. That's the most disappointing thing for me, I think, for the most part, is the fact that even if this defense continues at the trajectory that they're on, a historic pace for this unit, and becomes one of the NFL's best all-time defenses, you still will never get to know what it looked like without Trevon Diggs or with Trevon Diggs in the fold. So, yeah, huge injury, huge ramifications. However, maybe not a huge impact because you have some guys to fill that in. We'll see how the Cowboys and Dan Quinn are able to get the job done. Let's talk to Jordan Lewis. He spoke to the media earlier in the week. Here's what he had to say about the pressure stepping up and stepping into that new role on the inside.
They're explosive, definitely explosive. On the receiver end, they got some guys that can go down the field and stretch us vertically, and that opens up the run game. So I mean, the offense, I feel like they have a good complete offense that that matches up well.
Watching tape this week of what you guys did against the Jets, what have you seen? Was there room for improvement? Where are you looking at?
Just continue to play the style of ball that we know. Just go out there every day and perfect our craft. Honestly, but the Cardinals are definitely a good challenge. Regardless of their record, they can get it on for sure.
Jordan, you mentioned their record 0-2, but if you look at it also, they've only lost by 7 total points. How do you guys avoid overlooking a team like that?
Like I said, we think they're a great offense. We feel like they can get it on and play however they want to. If they want to run the ball, they can. If they want to throw the ball, they can. We feel like this is a premier offense, and they can get it done. I feel like a lot of guys get stuck up in not having a big name, but those guys can go out there and play.
Jordan Lewis with plenty of pressure on him through this week because he's back in the fold, and not only is he healthy, but he has to come in and play significant snaps for that Dallas defense. He may not be the only one in backup duty, or at least starting duty this week, that might have a big challenge on their hands. And with more on that, we go out to State Farm Stadium on the sideline as the Cowboys prepare to face the Cardinals with Nick Eatman live from the sideline. Nick, offensive line is a huge question right now. Multiple questionable grades going into this matchup. What does it look like up front for the Cowboys, and what could the starting five be?
Well, they're still trying to figure out the starting. Dak Martin is out at right guard, and center Tyler Biotish is out as well. Looks like Tyron Smith is probably not going to play in this game. He is active. He's a captain. But as it stands right now, he's going to work out right now. They're going to see what he can do. Obviously, he was healthy enough to be active, but that's the reason why Chuma Edoga is not going to be at right guard. That'll be TJ Bass. It's because they probably need him at some point at left tackle. Maybe he starts. Maybe he finishes the game. We're going to see what Tyron Smith can do. But the way it looks right now, it'll probably be Edoga, Tyler Smith, Brock still.
So 3 different starters out on the line of scrimmage for the Cowboys is what you're saying. Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, and Tyler Biotish all not in the fold. If that's the case, what is your confidence level on the offensive line going up against this Cardinals defense?
Well, it's not as good. This game is starting to get a lot more competitive when you talk about the injury to Diggs, and then now what's happening with the offensive line. So that's how you make this game equal. Is the best players you've got are now banged up and not ready to play. We'll find out about Tyron Smith, but either way, it's obviously not at a point where he's at 100%. So it's the confidence level is not the same. We'll see what these guys can do. Bass has had a good training camp, and he's got some work here. And Edoga at left tackle wasn't something that really looked good at training camp at all. Now, he was going up against Micah Parsons in this pass rush, but to me, he's more of a guard. So him at tackle, that's one where that's going to be interesting.
Now, you might see Awesome Richards in the fold there, too, and just basically having to plug the gaps where need be. Based on the Trevon injury, we just talked extensively about that. Which one do you feel like is more of an impact in Week 3 specifically? The offensive line injuries racking up, or Trevon Diggs on the outside, not having him in the secondary?
Yeah. I think the offensive line, just because there's so many and it's a continuity thing, I think that the depth that they have at corner is pretty good. You are losing an elite cover guy, so there's no doubt that that's going to be significant. But I think the fact that it's looking like 2, maybe 3 starters and really key players too. These are guys that make calls on the line with Biotish and Zach Martin. So you talk about your interior, and then also Dak's blind side there at the left tackle. So that's really going to be a big blow, especially if Tyron Smith isn't playing.
Not all great news from Nick Eatman, but the good news is we're going to hear from you on the back end with Stephen Jones later in the day. But thank you again for joining us. And unfortunately, not the great news from the sideline from State Farm Stadium, as the Cowboys might be without 3 of their offensive linemen starters. Tyron Smith, Zach Martin, Tyler Biotish, all very much so up in the air for their status going up against the Cardinals here in about an hour. Let's hear from Dak Prescott, who, of course, is going to be behind that makeshift offensive line, and how things can unfold for him and what he's focusing on going into the week against the Cardinals.
Yeah, it is. It's a blessing. Really is. Grew up wanting to play this game at its highest level, and that's simply what this league is. And to think back that this would be, to say I've had 99 at-bats at it, and this would be 100 is pretty cool. Being the physical game it is, knowing how hard it is to play in this league, stay in this league. It's something special. Not that I take any moment for granted, but Yeah, I mean, I saw that stat, I guess, earlier this week, and it was sent to me, and that was a pretty cool one.
Can you talk about that line between not being too overconfident over an 0-2 team, but still having confidence within you and your teammates?
Yeah, I mean, it's the NFL. You never really should look at records. As writers, as players, or as anybody associated with the NFL, I think you learn that quick, that you can't look at the record. So for us, it's about being confident in who we are, and simple as that, and understanding that we've got to grow and we've got to build on these first 2 games and ultimately just get to 3-0.
So Dak Prescott talking about this being his 100th game as the quarterback for the in the NFL, and of course for the Dallas Cowboys. Here are his all-time ranks among Cowboys quarterbacks. First in completion percentage, he's actually setting a career high as we speak, 71% completion here in 2023. The passing touchdown certainly up there, only trailing Tony Romo. Then you've got the passing yards, the attempts, the completions, and then a big-time number down there at the bottom. 63 wins. He has a chance for number 64 today as we return with Barry Church, Isaiah Stanback. I mean, what is Dak Prescott? It's hard to put into words, but I'm going to ask you to put it into words.
All right.
What has he meant to this organization in just a short amount of time? But 100 games, I mean, that's nothing to sneeze at.
That's nothing to sneeze at all. And I understand it's a short sample size. And I was only able to play with him for 1 year, his rookie year. But I can say this, man, this guy was probably one of the best leaders I have ever been around in my life. I mean, when you talk about a team in 2016 that was veteran-led. I mean, there was no young guys out there. It was all veteran-led. And this guy was able to come in as a rookie, take over that team, and lead all of us to the playoffs. And from there on, he has not looked back. I mean, he's gotten more comfortable with this offense when you talk about his ability on the playing field. But to me, when I think about Dak Prescott, all I can think about is the leader, because he's one of the best leaders I have ever been around.
Yeah, you could talk about his stats all day long. I know you could speak to his leadership, but I think when you talk about the individual and some of the things that he's overcome, I think he is a model citizen, and I know he's the greatest representation of the brand that you could ever hope for an organization. So he's doing amazing things, obviously on the field, off the field, and inside that locker room, and that's all you can ask for out of your QB1.
Well, and the new system that Mike McCarthy is putting in as play caller has allowed Dak Prescott to be successful here in 2023, and a chance for him to continue in that same echelon. I mean, it's back-to-back games for the first time since 2021 where Dak Prescott has not thrown an interception. He'll look to make that 3 straight today. But why is it so simple for Dak right now, Isaiah? Why does he look like he's just a completely different confidence level than he was last year?
Well, it's the system. It's a change between Kellen Moore and Mike McCarthy. I mean, you just talked about it in some of the stat lines there. You know, in last year was 66% completion rate. This year is 71. You talk about the 15 interceptions last year. He has 0 interceptions this year. You know, even with them, 27.5 points per game last year. It's 35 points per game this year, leading the NFL. So when you start looking at the comparisons from recent years, I mean, there's higher risk, higher reward in Kellen Moore's regime, but now underneath Coach McCarthy, it's all about efficiency and consistency, and that's exactly what you're seeing on the field.
Dak Prescott this year has averaged a career low 5.5 yards, air yards per attempt. So that's how far he actually throws the football. 5.5 air yards per attempt in 2023. His previous low was 7.5 back in 2018. So nearly 2 yards less on average. That's not just in total, on average per throw. They've kept it underneath, and he's allowed that to turn into a higher completion percentage. Let's talk about the guys he's throwing the football to, though. CeeDee Lamb has provided the majority of the production, and by majority, I mean majority. 55% of the Cowboys' receiving yards have gone to 88. Does that change this week against Arizona, Barry, or is this something we can expect to continue?
I think you're going to expect this to continue. I mean, he's really taken over this number 1 receiver option. I mean, when you look at it last year, it took him all the way to week 9 to break the century mark. This week, he does it after week 2. And we look at this guy in the offseason, he put the work in, obviously, to become one of the better receivers in the National Football League. But when we talk about the offensive system that's coming into to the Dallas Cowboys, it really features CeeDee Lamb out there. I mean, this is a guy where Mike McCarthy put his number 1 priority when it comes to the passing game is to get number 88 the football early and often, and he has really shined in that role, and I'm expected to see more of that coming from CeeDee Lamb this season.
CeeDee Lamb is absolutely being a dog as of late, and when his partner, the cook, Mr. Cook, shows up, he's going to be able to eat more. You understand what I'm saying? So, they're going to continue to feed him. The system's going to continue to grow. You have not seen what this offense is capable of. They have not rushed the ball as effectively as they like. They have not had their starting offensive line. When all those things come into play, then you're going to see these numbers really escalate.
Isaiah, how does Michael Gallup get back in the fold? Just 2 receptions, 13 yards, 4 targets this season. Does he see an increased role, or how does he get to that point?
I'm not sure, Kyle, just being honest with you. I don't see how he can be as dominant as he's been in past years. In past years, the system is predicated off of big plays, off of pushing the ball down the field. You just mentioned the numbers, right? You're talking about 7.5 yards per attempt in last year, all the way down to 5.5 this year. It's about shorter, highly effective passes, and there's a lot of two-man concepts. To be honest with you, there's 12 personnel, which takes him off the field. So even now when he walks in the field in 11 personnel, the ball's coming out quicker. He doesn't what they value most about Michael Gallup is big play, big catches down the field, and they're not getting to that aspect of this offense. So I'm not sure how he fits in.
Yeah, I'm with you on that one. I mean, without a doubt, Michael Gallup has got to step up. There's no ifs, ands, or buts about it. And he had a perfect opportunity to do so last week with Cooks being out, but the production just wasn't there from Gallup overall. So to me, when you look at this season overall, they're going to need Michael Gallup's production out there eventually as the season goes on, but he's got to step up and fill in that role. I mean, if you're not producing, and just like I know, when you get that bag like they've given Michael Gallup, the expectations are for you to go out there and be one of these top receivers. And so far, 2 receptions for 13 yards, that's just not going to cut it.
How about Tony Pollard, though? 48 touches, tied for the most in NFL with Christian McCaffrey. They've been getting the ball to Tony Pollard. Can that continue, though, with the way that he's been mostly a home run hitter in the past?
I would not like it to continue on that rate. I mean, I think
48 in 2 games.
That's a lot of touches. And last week, he got a lot more touches. I think he went up to 32 because the offensive snaps up there were 83. So everybody's usage is going to go up a little bit. But to me, the sweet spot for Tony Pollard, 15 to 20 touches, including receiving yards. That's where you get the most bang out of your buck. And so far, besides last week, I think these coaching staff has done a great job in maintaining Tony Pollard.
Let the man eat.
Let him eat.
Let him eat, man. Listen, he's not running in between tackles getting beat up by these linebackers and defensive linemen. So I don't care how often you get him the ball as long as he's not taking that punishment. They're finding creative ways to get him the ball in space, to get it to him in the boundary, whether he's catching the ball, whether he's running the screen, whether he's running the ball. He's not taking a beating. And I think that's ultimately the reason why you're concerned about him having a huge workload. Let him be on the field, let him catch the ball, let him go ahead and run the ball, as long as he's not getting knocked out.
Said like a true offensive player. Said like a true defensive player. Hey, it works out. Hey, you've got a background for both of these guys. You got to have a context. It makes sense. You're saying, don't give him the ball too much, and you're saying, give it to him. Let him feast. Let him go. Let's hear from Tony Pollard himself about the workload, about the challenge at hand of being RB1 and what he can expect out of the future.
I mean, we just got to be better. Got to be more disciplined. Got to execute as a whole. And, we just got to make those plays down there on the goal line. It's going to be a physical matchup. It's not really much scheme you can do down there. So we just got to be physical and execute.
Tony, how do you prepare for a game in which you guys are heavy favorites against Arizona?
Same way we have, these past 2 weeks. You got to give every team their respect. Do your due diligence. Our preparation is pretty much the same as it is every week. And, just lock in when it comes game day.
Success brings them a lot of confidence, but there's that thin line between confidence and complacency. How are you communicating, because as a veteran in the running back room, how are you communicating that to the younger players?
Just talking to the guys in the running back room, just letting them know, let's get our work at practice, let's push ourselves to the limit. We feel like we can't go another play, try to go one more, and you'll be surprised at your stamina come game day.
Do you agree there's that thin line between confidence and complacency?
Definitely, yeah. There's definitely a thin line between the two.
Tony Pollard certainly excited about the role that he's been thrust into back here with Nate Newton. And there's plenty of excitement around what Tony Pollard can bring to the table. But he's got to continue that, right? He's got to stay healthy. That's the biggest thing at the moment.
Yeah, it is the biggest thing at the moment. And I'm kind of with Church on that. 22 touches a game, so he'll look 4 over with 48 touches. 22 a game, pass and run. That's what I feel per game until we get to the playoffs, and then burn him up. Eat him alive. Yeah.
Let's keep him healthy, though. We need him. We saw that last year. You can't let him get hurt in the playoffs either, because that happens to affect this offense quite a bit as well. All right. This game is so odd. I mean, the Cowboys 2-0, Cardinals 0-2. It happens almost all the time. We saw the stat earlier where the Cardinals have won 6 of the last 7 against the Dallas Cowboys. How do they avoid that trap game? Because not only is New England coming up next week, but they've got San Francisco in Week 5. How do you avoid looking ahead when the Cowboys have looked so good through the first 2 weeks?
It's already been taken care of, Kyle. The injuries. The injuries don't allow anybody to look past any game, past any player or opponent that they're finna face now. Our offensive line is in shambles. We've lost a key secondary guy. that in itself, the coaches are beating the war drums. Fellas, do not look ahead. You cannot look ahead.
So that's a professional tease is what I'm talking about. That's why they pay Nate Newton the big bucks to be on Cowboys Pregame Live, because let's talk about those injuries. Here is the inactive list for the Cowboys, and the inactive list, it has some big-time names on it. Zach Martin, Tyler Biadasz, Israel Mukuamu, who we thought might be able to mix in with the injury to Trevon Diggs. Then you've got kind of the normal names on there as well. Eric Scott Jr., Viliami Fehoko, Jalen Brooks, Trey Lance, all normally inactive. Trey Lance as the emergency quarterback. A break class in case of emergency. If he's able to come in, he can be elevated and active. He'll be in pads. But let's start with the offensive line. I mean, my goodness, you already said it. In shambles, no Zach Martin, no Tyler Biadasz. That is done. Nick Eatman told us a moment ago that they could be without Tyron Smith as well. All three guys up front. How does this completely shuffle things?
It's all hands on deck. Coach Mike Solari got his hands full. He's got to put the best 5 available guys in the right positions. But I heard the guys talk earlier that how big Diggs is. Zach Martin is equal to that right there. When he is missing, we saw a little bit of a training camp. What he does for Steele and what he does for Biadasz, which is out, now it's Brock Hoffman's job for the time being. This thing could get very, very ugly if we don't call the right plays. If we don't stay into the run game and give these guys opportunity to get their wheels up under them, the wheels can come off of this real quick with the way the Cardinals run those mixed defenses.
How is the playbook going to change? Because we haven't really seen the whole West Coast scheme. We haven't seen the whole West Coast offense to this point because of the way that the first 2 games have gone. But now that you don't have that offensive line, we're definitely not seeing it today. How much does it shrink down as these 2 guys, maybe 3, are unavailable?
44 runs last week, 44 or more runs this week. We got to mix it in there. Dak has to be cognizant of what's going on. If he's got a 3-step, 5-step drop, he got to get that ball out of there. He can't hold it because these guys haven't played together. I'm not saying individually they can't be strong, but as a unit, they have to stand together. So he's got to be aware of what's the down and distance and get the ball out of his hands.
So from what you're saying as an offensive lineman, is it better to go and pass block, or is it easier to come in, fill a hole, and pass block than it is to maybe protect in terms of a pass, or easier to run block than it is to pass block is what I'm trying to
I know what you're saying, and I'm feeling what you're saying. I want to run the ball today, at least 44 times, if possible. This is why Parsons is who he is, because I know he's on defense. He gonna have to really step up and kind of get us the ball or force issues where these DBs can get the ball and give us every opportunity, because we need to build some type of rhythm. And that rhythm is going to come through the run game. If we somehow, some way get down early and put us in a pass blocking situation, the way Coach Jonathan Gannon likes to mix his defenses, he can give us some looks. And he knows us. He was the defensive coordinator for the Eagles, so he knows us. So we have to be very careful on how we call plays and what we do.
Speaking on that, if you're at home and you're saying, oh, well, of course, it's the Cowboys and the Cardinals. Good thing these injuries happened this week on the offensive line and not later on in the season. Not so fast. Don't think about it that way, because this Cardinals defense has 9 sacks already this season. They're top 10 in the NFL in sacks. They've brought the pressure in terms of the blitz. They love to blitz off the back end. And like you said, this is a defensive coordinator. This is a head coach that knows this Cowboys team because they were with the Philadelphia Eagles previously. What have you seen from the Cardinals defense, and how are they going to challenge this banged-up offensive front?
Dennis Gardeck has 3 sacks. And like I said, the rest of it is thrown out through the rest of the team. Pay attention to this guy. He plays everywhere. He's number 45. He runs around everywhere. He's looking to do his old dance and all of this right here. We cannot let that happen early. Late in the game, once we get control of it, that's one thing. But early in the game, do not give these guys any juice. If we can keep them at bay, be up by 3 at the halftime, maybe 7, but never down, we can take the fire out of these guys.
Cowboys won the time of possession battle last week against the Jets, 42 minutes to 17. Do you need to see that same type of production, or at least close to it?
It would be sweet. If we can get 35 minutes.
Yeah.
Calm down, Nick. It would be sweet, Kyle.
It only takes offensive line injuries to rattle up Nate Newton. We were talking before the show, and he was just locked in. He was taking notes. He said, "I got to prepare for this." Yeah. It's like, Nate, you're not getting a call yet. You might soon, but you're not getting one yet. Let's hear from Micah Parsons. You talked about how he needs to have a big game. He's had 2 big ones already this season, off to a historic start in the 2023 campaign, and talking about what he's embracing being the lion of that Dallas defense.
You know, I just adapted to it. You know, I feel like some things you just got to embrace, and I feel like my energy and positivity, the things that I'm trying to bring into the guys and finding their own ego and finding themselves. I know a joke a lot around about it, but, like, I really feel like that's just who I am and who I want to be. And, like, when I always get my chance to talk in front of the room, I talk about the lion hunt and, like, the preciseness and how methodical it has to be and how lions have to work as a team to get what they need and so they can feed their families. I said, if you look at this is what we are, bro. Like, we out here trying to hunt this guy and we trying to kill these people so we can feed our families. Like, that's our why. I said, no matter if it's nature or in life, everyone has a why. And, like, every week we get a chance to go out there and fight for ours. So I said, we got to be a pack of lions, and Tay's a jaguar, and, you know, everyone's just finding their. And then Mozzie said he's an orca now because I bring up the orca talk and how they. So, you know, everyone is just finding their own identity of who they want to be. So it's pretty cool, and that's why I do it.
Embracing the lion is only the start for Micah Parsons. He's off to a fantastic beginning to the 2023 season. 15 pressures, tied for the most in the NFL right now, to go along with 3 sacks. He has been as disruptive and as impactful of a player on the defensive side of the football as we've seen not only all season, but really over the last few decades for the Dallas Cowboys and for the NFL. It has people talking not only in the building but nationally about the possibility of winning a defensive MVP for the first time since 1986. The last person to win an MVP on the defensive side of the football was Lawrence Taylor. So let's compare between the two of them through what they've done in their career. 184 games. 184 games, of course, according to Pro Football Reference, because Lawrence Taylor didn't have the beginning of his career count as an official statistic sacks-wise, but we have it now. Micah Parsons is, in terms of the numbers, off to a better start outside of interceptions. Of course, Lawrence Taylor has the INTs, but every other pass rush category, he's been as impactful or more impactful than Lawrence Taylor on the first part of his career. So with that being said, there's a lot of pace going on with Micah Parsons, a lot of questions. It's still very early, very, very early to compare him to a guy like Lawrence Taylor, but at least in terms of the potential, it's there. You played against Lawrence Taylor, Nate.
Yes.
Tell me why he was so impactful for those Giants teams and how Micah compares.
For the same reason that this kid here is so impactful. He's very athletic, very explosive. This guy can play everywhere on the field. But like both guys, they both started out as linebackers, and they started moving around. And now the first year, Lawrence Taylor played linebacker, and he had Bill Belichick as his coach, much like Dan Quinn brought this guy in as his coach. So you had 2 genius-type guys that could see the potential of both guys. First year, Micah played linebacker. First year, Lawrence played linebacker. As their careers evolved and they became better pass rushers, they became better run defenders, then you can start doing that mad science deal, moving guys around to the A gap, the B gap. Well, you know what? In today's NFL, where you can use a guy like Micah, where Lawrence was the first of his kind, Micah is the finished product of the kind. We've had guys like Lawrence who can set the pace, and this guy's doing a hell of a job of just getting out there, doing what he can do, and he can affect other guys. Like Lawrence Taylor made Carl Banks better. He made Leonard Marshall better. He made Pepper Johnson better because they can move all of these guys around. Now, this kid here is making Osa give me the last name. Thank you. And he's making Damone Clark better, and he's making D-Law, who's a little bit older, come back to his youth. This guy can be real impactful. This guy can make some things happen. I am telling you, he's not Lawrence Taylor because Lawrence Taylor is there. He's a legend. He's everything. He's my MVP. But this guy right here, if he stays healthy and the football gods work with him, 155 sacks is not out of the realm.
And, of course, the numbers that we saw on the full screen a moment ago are on pace through what they've done so far in their career. And, of course, Lawrence Taylor, those were his final numbers. Micah Parsons still has a very, very long way to go. As Nate said it, the football gods are going to have to shine on Micah Parsons in that regard. The thing is he's doing that type of stuff, though. And the fact that you're even in the conversation this early in your career is impressive. Based off of what you've seen, from a secondary standpoint, he not only makes the guys up front better around him, he makes the whole defense better.
I mean, you said it right there. I mean, Nate, you talked about what, Lawrence Taylor was able to do in the trenches and making those guys just as good. And Micah's doing the same thing for the D-Laws, the Odighizuwas as well. But coming from a safety standpoint, when you're in that back end, when you're in that secondary, it's hard to cover guys. It's hard to make sure you can match up with the talent they have in the National Football League. But when you have a guy like Micah Parsons, to where no matter what's going on, you can get double teamed, triple teamed. He's going to find a way to make sure that quarterback gets the ball out quick. It makes your job that much easier. You don't have to worry about the deep ball getting there or the quarterback having too much time to pick apart your defense. You know when you got a guy like that, the ball is coming out fast. So as a safety, as a corner, you can sit on a lot of those routes. You can have vision on the quarterback, and you can see where he's going with the football. That's why you see so many great breaks from Diggs, from Gilmore, from these safeties, Curse and Hooker, because they're able to read the quarterback. They understand that it has to come out fast, and that's all to do with Micah Parsons and his ability to affect the quarterback. DeMarcus Lawrence, Odighizuwa, Dante Fowler, they all feed off that energy, and it's creating a great defense. And like you said, the mad scientist Dan Quinn, he's able to get the most out of all of his players, especially Micah Parsons.
Yeah, Dan Quinn and Micah Parsons, it's a marriage that, of course, has worked to perfection to this point. Based off of what you've seen from Micah, can he do it, gentlemen? Can he be the first defensive MVP in the NFL since 1986 if he continues on the trajectory?
Man, usually that's a reward for an offensive player, but when you talk about Micah Parsons and what he's able to bring defensively, I can say that I believe he has the best shot since Lawrence Taylor to get that MVP. When you talk about MVPs, you talk about guys that not only excel their game, but make everybody around them just as good. And to me, when you see Micah Parsons on primetime each and every week, it just goes to the eyes and it shows that this guy can have what it takes to be the first defensive MVP since Lawrence Taylor.
If they can get 13 wins, he has a great chance because our head coach is getting out of the way for this kid. He's getting out of the way for the defense in a whole. So I'm not saying that Dak is not going to have a sensational year, but the way they're trying to control the ball and keep our defense fresh, he has a chance to be something special. MVP, I don't know, because this is a quarterback-driven league.
Yeah. And like we talked about earlier in the show, he doesn't have Trevon Diggs, who's another high-caliber cornerstone player for this defense. So if he's going to continue to get to that upper echelon, get to that MVP caliber season, he's going to have to push without Trevon Diggs on the back end, maybe even up his game, which is hard to even think about with what he's doing percentage-wise. 26% of dropbacks are pressured by Micah Parsons. It's incredible what he's been doing, and he'll look to continue that as we go along. Speaking of incredible, let's hear from one of our incredible writers at DallasCowboys.com. Nick Harris breaks down this matchup and breaks down that Dallas defense as they continue to look forward.
The run defense from 2022 was a big highlight going into the offseason as something that this defense wanted to improve going into 2023. So much so that they went and spent a first-round pick on defensive tackle Mozzie Smith, brought back Jonathan Hankins to also help the interior of that defensive line. But it's not only those guys. It's the guys on the edges like Micah Parsons and DeMarcus Lawrence, even Leighton Vander Esch in the second level that have been able to help out with the run defense. Through the first two games, that hasn't been a concern at all. We've seen Dalvin Cook and Breece Hall in week 2 combine for just 16 yards. In week 1, Saquon Barkley and the rest of the Giants offense failed to get into the end zone. So moving forward, the run defense looks solved. Going into week 3 with a challenge against James Conner, who rushed for 106 yards against the Giants, Micah Parsons was able to speak to the media after the game against the Jets, saying to all the teams with running game plans, run at me, run at whoever, we're coming.
We come down and set the tone saying you won't run on us, and then we go get our sacks. Now that's what changes everything. So to all the teams with them game plans, come on, run at me, run at whoever, we coming.
Along with James Conner, the Cowboys defense will also try to stop Joshua Dobbs, who has been able to escape from the pocket a couple of times so far this season, rushing for 41 yards against the New York Giants in week 2, a career high that he might be looking to build upon in week 3.
Nothing's ever perfect, but that's why you practice. So we're going to come back, watch the film, get better, and study for our next opponent. That's the Arizona Cardinals.
Micah Parsons and the rest of the defense definitely has a good reason to be confident going into Week 3 against the Arizona Cardinals. Backup quarterback and a running back with James Conner. They're going to look to get the running game going, but the run defense, they're looking to keep that momentum going into Week 3. Back to you, Kyle.
Trying to keep that momentum going is on the forefront, I think, of everybody's mind for this Dallas Cowboys team. This might be one of those that you just survive in advance. This is a team, at least talent-wise, you feel pretty comfortable against, but they do provide their own unique challenges. Back here with Barry Church, Isaiah Stanback, Nate Newton, I'm Kyle Yeomans. Let's talk about some of those challenges, starting with James Conner at the running back position. He is a tough, physical runner, not somebody like the Dalvin Cook or the Breece Hall or even the Saquon Barkley that the Cowboys have seen to start the season. James Conner brings a physicality to his game. How is that different from a defender's perspective, Terry?
Well, this is a buckle your chin strap, big boy pass type of game. I mean, I've had the pleasure or non-pleasure of going against James Conner multitude of times out there, and this is a guy that if he's going north and south, if he started going north and south and he's getting rolling, then it's going to be a headache to bring this guy down. The key is you got to make him go sideline to sideline. You got to make him go east and west and use that speed to track him down. But if he gets going north and south, it could be a long afternoon.
Well, you better get him in the backfield because this dude is a juggernaut.
Yes.
You let him get the momentum going.
Yes.
He's going to come right downhill. He's going to put the crown of his helmet right in your face, and you're going to be going backwards. You have to make sure that you catch him early and make sure you call the rest of your boys back in the backfield as well, because this guy can hurt you if he gets going. His confidence, you saw it on his arms. It says Conner strong. Make sure he's Conner weak today.
And he's the emotional leader of this team, because if he get going like these guys say, if he get going, he put this team on his back. It's not flashy. He got just enough wiggle to make you miss and a whole lot of power to run you over. So he's the emotional leader. Stop him.
Got to find a way to stop him. And James Conner, to this point, has put up some good numbers. He's one of 2 players on the Cardinals roster with 80 or more scrimmage yards in 2023. It's only he and Marquise Brown. Those are the only 2 on the entire Cardinals roster that have put up good numbers, but he has certainly done so. What about his quarterback, though? Joshua Dobbs to start the season. There you see the numbers, 51% completion, 360 passing yards to go with the rushing yards. This is what he did back against Dallas back in Week 17, but he's even better than he was back then because he was picked up off of the practice squad before that game. He's at least had three weeks into the system with Arizona. Isaiah, from a quarterback standpoint, what have you seen from Josh Dobbs? What does he do well? How is he challenging this Dallas defense today?
I like him. I honestly like him.
You really do?
I really do. I think
he's not lying. I've been with him all week, gentlemen.
Everybody
is
a fully capable quarterback. When you think about a quarterback, especially in today's game, you think about you want what? You want somebody who's smart. Well, he's an aerospace engineer. He's definitely smart. You want somebody who has some good size. Got some good size. You don't want to meet him in the open field. He can run, and he has a cannon of an arm. Oh, and by the way, he makes good decisions. I think this dude is a very capable quarterback. Obviously, he's getting used to this system. I think he caused Dallas some issues last year in his 1 week that he was with Tennessee. Now, all of a sudden, you heard Kyle say he's been here for a month, and he's starting to figure his guys out. I also think that in this system that they run in Arizona, this zone read scheme, you saw that somewhere, Philadelphia. Yeah, very Philadelphia-ish. So make sure you get to him early and often.
Oh, waiting on me. Okay, Mike Wilson. That's his big receiver. And the reason I mention that right there because he's a big target and he can get to him. If he drop back, boom, hit, look at Wilson, he's not there, he can take off. And I think if he take off, he can rush for some good yards. Like Isaiah said, he's a big guy, he's a tough guy, he plays well.
How many yards? Just to throw a number out
Well,
there.
I know Isaiah has something going around the facilities about 75 yards. And if he say 75, I'll say 74.
Okay, there you go.
Just going against them a little bit. We have a bet on our podcast, Talking Cowboys. Check it out, 9 a.m. Central Time, Monday through Friday. On the Players Lounge podcast, did you guys talk about Joshua Dobbs and what he brings?
Yeah, you can't sleep on a guy like Dobbs. I mean, this is a guy, he's a veteran in this league, and he's seen a lot of defenses. Yes. Plus, he's played against this defense last year and had some success. So he's not going to be surprised by the speed of their rush, their team speed overall. He'll be cool, calm, and collected back there. This is a scrappy team, so you cannot sleep on Arizona, and definitely don't sleep on Josh Dobbs.
What about the guys he's throwing the football to? We mentioned Marquise Brown. You mentioned Wilson. They also have Zach Ertz. Talk about a guy who's familiar with seeing the Cowboys star on the other side of the line of scrimmage. Zach Ertz has been targeted plenty through the first 2 weeks of the season. He's not as explosive as he once was, but Nate, when you look at the tight end room, some of these pass catchers, how will they push to the outside and some of the numbers they've had throughout their careers in Arizona?
I just think they'll be okay with this guy. Joshua Dobbs, being who he is, a smart guy, he'll find out ways to get this ball to Zach Ertz and to the rest of his wide receiving group. And once again, I'm going to go back to Mike Wilson. And we said that on Hanging with the Boys, by the way, since everybody knows the podcast.
I mean, we might as well just plug the entire Cowboys podcast system. What do you think about the pass catchers?
Well, being that I'm on Talking Cowboys, and that's the first show in the week, 9 a.m. No, I think the pass catchers are good. I think these guys have very capable guys, but the thing is their speed. These guys are 4-3 across the board, hands down. You got Hollywood Brown, you got Rondell Moore out there. Both of those guys have the juice to get you loose if you allow for them to. And then you got the big boy Wilson that he was talking about. Zach Ertz likes to play in the middle of the field. The one thing about this offense is they like to push the ball down the field. So if they don't have time to push the ball down the field, they're not a threat. But if they have time to get down the field, then you obviously have to play them man coverage. And if you're playing man coverage, then you got to worry about that dude Dobbs getting out the pocket and running.
This is true. Isaiah, you said exactly what I was thinking. The secondary, stay on top. When you talk about Hollywood Brown, he has nothing but go juice. And Josh Dobbs, he has the arm to get it there. So stay on top. That's the only way the Arizona Cardinals can stay in this game with big chunk plays, big plays like that. Stay disciplined in your secondary and stay on top of Hollywood Brown because he can burn you.
Speaking of staying on top, speaking of the secondary, we've talked about Trevon Diggs a little bit to this point in the show. Can Stephon Gilmore still do all those things? Can he still be cornerback one in this Cowboys defense and in this secondary? Based off of what we've seen so far, still has some of that juice, but does he have enough to step up and be that number one guy?
I believe he does. I mean, even though he might have lost a step here and there, he still has that technique. He still has that ability to jam you up at the line of scrimmage and slow down even the fastest wide receivers out there. Now, when it comes to Gilmore traveling, maybe in the future, I see that maybe coming to fruition because you're going to go against some guys like a A.J. Brown, like a Deebo Samuel. You're going to go against guys like a Tyreek Hill that can blow the top off of your defense. I want my most experienced cornerback out there. But as we go into this week, I believe they'll play right and left and have Bland handle his situation on that side. But without a doubt, Gilmore can still be that number one corner just because he has that technique at the line of scrimmage.
I think he has to be, Barry.
Yeah.
I think he has to be that number one guy, but I am concerned because I think where you really relied on Trevon Diggs to be the man that can sit in your hip pocket and run with some of the fastest receivers in the game, I'm not sure if Gilmore has that 6th gear still. I think he might be at like 4.5 gears, you know what I'm saying? So I'm not sure that he still has that go juice, but he's cerebral. He can still stick in your hip pocket as long as he's staying up on top of the coverage, as you mentioned, and looking down. The moment he has to turn his hips and turn and run, that's when I get worried, especially when we start talking about receivers that have 4.3 speed.
I just think wisdom will keep him at the top and hang on in there until these other guys get up to speed. Bland and Lewis and all these guys get up to speed. I think he got enough wisdom to play the top receivers. But every down, every game, it's a long season. He got a little bit of old legs there.
Yeah, we got to make sure and get through an entire 17-game season.
Yes.
Remember, we got 15 more of those suckers to go, and we're not even talking about the playoffs. If you're going to go where this Cowboys team wants to go, you've got 18 games left, at least, maybe 19 if you end up in the wild card round as well. What type of pressure does this put on the safety position, Barry? Of course, we're going to start with you, our resident Cowboy safety.
Yes, sir.
But when Trevon Diggs goes down, what type of pressure is put on these guys?
It puts a little bit more pressure on the safety. And I'll take it back to my time in Jacksonville when I got to play with, Jalen Ramsey in his prime and A.J. Boye, who was an all-pro in his own right. When you got guys that can lock down on the outside like that, as a safety, it allows you to just read it. And that means just to make a play and read the quarterback. That's what we've seen so far from this defense when Diggs was healthy. Guys just breaking on the football, reading the quarterback. With Diggs being out, I'm not saying it's going to take a full step back, but some of these safeties early on, they're going to have to check on Bland on that outside. Make sure he has everything handled over there. Dan Quinn might put a safety over top of him just to see how things work out like that. But for the most part, it's like night and day. When you have two bookend corners on that outside, it makes your job as a safety that much easier. With the absence of Diggs, they're going to have to do a little bit more tweaking to the game plan.
Yeah, I imagine that they will have to do some tweaking, and I think it's going to come in the form of more zone coverages, right? Yes. I mean, when you have Diggs and Gilmore on each side, you can play a little bit more man, and you can put your safeties back there to hover around and just pick off the leftovers. But now you got your three-headed monster back, though, BC. You got Donovan Wilson's coming off of injury. You have you Malik Hooker back there. You have J-Ron Kearse. All three of these guys are going to be able to go out there and make some plays, and they'll be sitting over the top, hovering to make sure that these guys have the support that they need to make plays.
Yeah, for the most part, making plays is going to be a little bit tougher because that's what Trevon Diggs was, right?
Well,
That's what he
playmaker.
was. He was a playmaker. You do get Donovan Wilson back this week in the safety spot. That's going to make things a little bit easier. You might have to rotate Marquise Bell, might have to rotate Wanye Thomas back and forth. Both of those things certainly a possibility for this Dallas defense, even without Diggs in the fold, but it does put pressure on those guys around them like we've talked about throughout the show. Let's go back out to State Farm Stadium, talk about maybe some more injury news because we've had plenty throughout the day already. Nick Eatman is on the sideline with Cowboys Chief Operating Officer Stephen Jones.
Thank you, Kyle. And as always, I've got Stephen Jones, Cowboys Chief Operating Officer here at AT&T Stadium. No, sorry, State Farm Stadium, but it certainly did sound like it just a second ago when they walked in. This is going to be a really nice crowd of Cowboy fans.
Well, we've always been so fortunate to have a lot of Cowboys fans here that were based here long, I think, before the Cardinals came. Sure. But certainly just feels so warm to walk into a building like this, land in Phoenix out here, and have this type of support. And it's going to be a fun afternoon, and hopefully we'll give them what they've been looking for.
Well, let's talk about the offensive line. I mean, some issues there with the injury standpoint. Still kind of not sure. Do you have any update on, do you think Tyron Smith will play? Is he going to just kind of see how he does here in warm-ups?
You know, I think that's going to be a long shot for him. He's going to dress out and hopefully, give it a run and see, or even if he has to, be in a situation, emergency, because of we moved 2 linemen up for this game, and so that's about all we have. Yeah. And you like to go with 8, but he'll probably be for sure dressing, and we'll see kind of how the game goes and see if if he can get any work in. If he can't, then it's a long season.
Did you think maybe on Thursday or Friday that guys like Zach Martin, Tyler Biotish might have a chance? Was there any setback, or is it just like they just weren't ready?
Well, you always think they have a chance. I mean, Zach Martin's, I don't think he's ever missed one. I mean, I'm sure he has, but and Tyler the same way. Biotish, he's always there, but it just turns out they weren't ready to go. And like I said, this is a long season, and you don't want to get them out there if they're not 100%. And that's the decision we made, and we've got some good guys that are ready to go in there now. It's great to have Tyler Smith back.
Right.
Obviously have Chuma ready to go, and then we'll have our 2 centers we brought off the practice squad to help out there, and then of course Awesome Richards just keeps getting better each week. So we'll be fine.
What about on the other side, cornerback with Trevon Diggs obviously out for the season? You got some depth there, though. Are you excited about what you might see out of Deron Bland and those guys?
Well, Deron's played out there, and he's done it at a high level. Obviously, Jay Lou has just done it at a high level at the slot position. And then, of course, I always call him Noah I.
Yeah.
Is ready to go in, a first-round pick of the Dolphins a few years back. And he's done a great job for us out there, so we think we're fine.
All right, and then Micah Parsons, obviously, and those guys rushing the passer. When you got them doing what they're doing right now and rushing at a high level, makes it a little bit better what you have on the back end there.
Well, the quarterback doesn't have near as long, and so they don't have to hold that coverage as long, and I think our guys are going to step up and do a great job. Obviously, our thoughts go out to Trevon, all the work he put into this season. He was really off to a great start, but unfortunately that's part of our game, and he'll do what it takes to come back bigger, stronger, and faster.
All right, like you said, it's a long season. We'll see if they can get a big win today. That's Stephen Jones, Cowboys Chief Operating Officer. Kyle, we'll throw it back to you guys.
So that's unfortunate. We just heard it from Stephen Jones himself, Cowboys COO, saying that, long shot for Tyron Smith. So let's talk about it. What you got?
We got Chuma Edoga at the left tackle, right? Yep. Mm-hmm. We got T.J. Bass at the right guard.
Left guard.
T.J. Bass.
I believe he would be left guard. Right?
Is Zach Martin out?
Zach Martin is out as well.
Right, so you would want to go
T.J. Bass at right guard?
At right guard, I would.
Yeah.
Then you would go with the other kid.
Awesome Richards?
Yeah, Awesome Richards at the left guard, because he's played left, and Bass has played right during the training camp. But I'm going to leave it to Mike Solari. He'll pick the best 5. I believe in him. Like these guys, like I said, I trust in Mike Solari. Now I want to see what Coach McCarthy does with this, because you can't give a lot of personnel. You got to kind of lock this thing down, slow it down, and keep it simple. Like we talked about earlier, if we can get 44 runs, maybe more, not much less, then we can get these guys into a rhythm. You don't want guys on different levels, and the quickest way to get them on the same levels is to do a lot of running. Play action pass should be big this week. Mm-hmm. Play action pass. And Tony, I know I said 22, don't leave the game. Pollard.
So here's my thing: is you entered the week expecting to get Tyler Smith back.
Yes.
You expected to get your starting 5 offensive linemen together for the first time since 2021. That was what the expectation was coming into the week. There's 3 guys, count them, 1, 2, 3 guys that go down. Zach Martin, Tyron Smith, Tyler Biadasz. That's unprecedented. Nate, did you guys ever lose 3 offensive linemen in 1 week? 1 practice, for that matter.
Now, the thing here that we have to look at is the most important position is Zach Martin. He keeps this team together when all things break loose. He is the guy that everybody look at. Hey, boy, we got our all-pro, all-world guy to butcher. But now your play caller, Biadasz, is out. That brings Hoffman in, Brock Hoffman. He's going to have to be on his P's and Q's. And now they're going to have to get out of the huddle even quicker to give him that extra opportunity to look around and to scan because he didn't get a lot of reps. He didn't get a lot. So it's going to have to be a whole mental thing for him. Like a backup quarterback, it's mental. It's mental for him this week.
From a quarterback standpoint, you don't have your center. You don't have your right guard. You don't have your left tackle. What does that do from a mentality standpoint for Dak Prescott today?
Well, good thing you have the Texas Coast offense.
That works.
Get the ball out your hands because they're going to need to get the ball out their hand. And the reason why is because these guys are the 8th ranked team in the whole league in terms of blitz percentage. These guys come after the quarterback. They like to bring it. Not only that, this is the defensive coordinator is from Philadelphia, right? He knows exactly what caused Dak Prescott some issues in the past. I think if Dak can get the ball out of his hands early, he's going to be okay. The protection won't be a problem. Right? The blitz won't be a problem. But if he has to hold the ball, you talked about play action. You have to be able to run the ball in order to have play action, right? You came into this game, you talked about it, Kyle, being excited to be able to run with your starters in there. You're getting 1 guy back, but now all of a sudden you get that 1 guy back and you lose 3. Running the ball is going to be a challenge. Blitz percentage is going to be a challenge. Coverages are going to be a challenge. This whole game is going to be a challenge.
How do you expect Arizona to attack this defensively? Because they know it too. They're going to look out there and they're not going to see 70, 63, 77. They're going to see that. What do you think they do?
Well, from a defensive perspective, like you guys said, I'm bringing this kitchen sink. Everything but the kitchen sink is coming at Dak Prescott. I'm testing these guys early and often to see if they can hold up. Because, look, I understand when you talk about offensive line, everything has to be working as a unit. Everything has to be all together, kind of glued together. When you got this musical chairs going around and cats, playing here and playing there and moving positions, that just invites the blitz. And like you said, Arizona loves to bring the pressure for the quarterback, and I can see a lot of that happening this afternoon.
I have a feeling a couple of our keys to the game are going to be predicated off of this offensive line having some sort of success. We'll start with you, Barry. How do the Cowboys start 3-0 and continue this momentum, even with the injuries they've had to deal with this week?
I'm going to go on the defensive side of the football. Continue to be as dominant as you've been these first 2 games. I understand the offense is hurting right now, the offensive line, all that good stuff. The defense, put it in your hands, put it on your shoulders, and go out there and don't even let Arizona score. Because if they score 0 points, if we score at least a field goal, we win the game. Defense, take over this game.
You have a lot of question marks going into this game in terms of your offensive line. You're in hostile territory. You can't have turnovers. Anything more than 1 turnover is going to put you in a bad situation today. So you have to take care of the ball, whether that's throwing the ball or whether that's securing it when you're carrying it. No more than 2 turnovers. Otherwise, no more than 1 turnover. Otherwise, you're going to find yourself in a real situation.
Coach Johnson used to tell us, and they tell me I got to stay back, but I'm going to step up and talk to y'all. Coach Johnson used to tell us, play a clean game. You are still the better team, and you should win. Maybe by 3, maybe by 1. But when you walk away, it should be a win.
I think I'm right with Nate. Yeah. It doesn't even predicate. I've been on the turnovers key the last 2 weeks. By the way, I've hit it both times. 3 and 1, week 1, 4 last week. The takeaways are always big. I'm going to keep my cards in hand for this one, though. Just take care of business. Do your job. Keep it rolling the way that you have been, because on paper, top to bottom, talent-wise, this team is as good as any in the NFL, especially whenever you're matched up against the Arizona Cardinals, who, of course, as a team just doesn't have that same level of talent. Play a clean football game, take care of the football, continue to drive down the field, and then keep things easy for Dak Prescott. That's ultimately what you need to do from a standpoint in this one, because it's not going to look pretty always. It's not going to continue to look like they're blowing up all these NFL teams all the time. You're going to face some adversity. The Cowboys are facing some today here in week 3 of the NFL season. Again, the reason why we're talking about this going into a game where they are 2-0, They're missing 3 offensive linemen as well. But they are ready to roll at State Farm Stadium in Arizona. DeMarcus Lawrence getting everybody fired up. 3:25 kickoff on Fox. For Barry Church, Isaiah Stanback, Nate Newton, Nick Eatman out of Arizona. I'm Kyle Yeoman saying so long from the Star in Frisco. We'll see you afterwards for Cowboys Game Night and Cowboys OT.